All right, welcome back everyone to block party number 18. That's right, 18 consecutive block parties without missing a Friday, Saturday. We are definitely the pioneers of the ultra long format Zoom meeting, 24-hour Zoom meeting, often 26 hours or 25, depending on how much overtime we go. But anyway, I just wanted to give Michael a little bit of a recap of a couple of things. One, I forget what the first one was, but the big one, help me out if anyone remembers what the first one was, but the big one is a recap of what we're cooking up, and I'll just cut right to the chase. We need to do SRM so urgently, it cannot be overstated. I mean, we're already late. It's like better late than never, right? Better that the fire crew shows up late to the fire than never. We're already late, and it's time to make it not never. And that's on the SRM front. Meanwhile, on the food front, the number of people who are food insecure is projected to double from 1 billion to 2 billion by the end of this year, right? Huge food insecurity. But I don't even think that properly factors in the degree of exponential climate change that will have kicked in even by the end of this year. So we need two big gun solutions. One is SRM and the other is feeding everyone. And the feeding everyone includes growing food way closer to home, even in your home. Hydroponics, indoor hydroponics, windowsill gardens, rooftop gardens, community gardens. You get the picture. Permaculture, right? It's all the usual suspects that we've been dreaming about for years. That's kind of the ultimate steady state we want to get to. But en route to that, we're going to still have a lot of distribution of food. So we got to optimize for production and distribution, economic model, everything. Soup to nuts, end to end. We got to feed everyone, period. And we got to do SRM, period. And the two go hand in hand, because you can't do SRM in a Mad Max world. And you can't feed everyone in an exponentially overheating planet. So they become this dynamic duo. Speaking of dynamic duos, Michael, I assume you're familiar, and if not, I'll recap, but with Silas's granddaughter, Kamaya, right? Dr. Silas Rao's granddaughter, Kamaya. Anyway, her friends call her K-Mama, partly because it's easier to translate and partly because she's very mothering. That's just her spirit, her nature. And she's a mix between Indian, Dr. Rao's from India, African-American, First Nation, and she's absolutely beautiful and just like, and very articulate, just an incredible spirit. So the bottom line is we're going to get her together with Greta Thunberg. And they're developing an app in India for K-Mama called the K-Mama app. And it's all about feeding everyone. And it's really good stuff. That's worthy of its own recap, but we'll skip it over for now. Silas and Kim and his granddaughter Kamaya in Arizona are working together on this, and they're delivering food to now getting into hundreds of people. It's just incredible. So the story is amazing, and it just so happens that Silas and I are both friends with Stuart Scott, who's the one who invited Greta Thunberg to the United Nations the very first time. So he's as close to a handler, for lack of a better word, as she's got, and we're friends with him. And so we're gonna basically say, look, let's get together and have a meeting. But the bottom line is, would Greta be willing to meet with Kamaya and talk food and SRM, right? Each with their respective people, of course, Silas and Stuart Scott in this case. Anyway, and then the two of them, so what would they do? They would put together an integrated whole story that spans feeding everyone and cooling the planet via SRM in a way that Kamaya's 10 years old. Greta's what, 16, 17 at this point? I don't know. She may be 18 for all I know at this point. But anyway, whatever. Call it 17, 16. So Kamaya is several years younger. See, it's not going to surprise anyone if Greta, meets with some adults and has a conversation. But if she brings in someone who's younger than her and looks different from her, with a different background and also a different focus on feeding everyone, and then you put the two together and you hear one of the girls saying, we can't do SRM without feeding everyone, and the other says, and we can't feed everyone without SRM. So we need each other. And then they like hug each other or trade flowers or, something, and voila, there's your story. It's Greta reloaded. It's the Gretrix reloaded, right? Anyway, and then one of the things we do among many is Greta and Kamaya would then specifically reach out with appropriate administrative support from the rest of us, but they would reach out to all the leaders of SRM in the world who urgently need to come together as a united front. Right now, it's like Tweedledee and Tweedledum, right? Everyone in the SRM community is totally fragmented. Everyone's trying to prove their own little solution, but what we need is for all the SRM folks to come together as a united front, right? And basically create a holistic message for the world that's simple and united, that says we need SRM. Now, how are you going to do it? Well, there's a mix of solutions, and we're working on coming up with the right mix. That's all you got to say. But don't contaminate the headline with too many details. The headline is 3 letters, SRM, urgently needed. And then with Greta and Kamaya simultaneously and holistically, I might add, promoting both SRM and food healers, the K-Mama app, feeding everyone, that's a story. That's a story you cannot ignore. You don't necessarily agree with it, but you cannot ignore it. And the fact that you cannot ignore it means that it's penetrated your psyche, which brings us into the realm of mythic systems and Mythos, the platform, and the meaning of meaning, and a new story of humanity, and the realm of Michael Gaia. Woo! Everybody, please welcome. Please unmute your mic and give an applause.
Thanks,
welcome and appreciation to
you.
Michael Gaia for being with us.
Thanks, Jamin. Thanks. So yeah, here's the segue. The 2 major points I picked up from what you just shared is the significance and importance of SRM, solar radiation management, and food production, agriculture. And as we've discussed before, I'm sure other people have similar ideas, but just looking at it really simply, I see we have these 2 problems. One involves the sun, one involves food. There's an overlap there. Maybe there's something in the middle where we can, use a shading technology that both shades and absorbs the sun's energy, and therefore all that energy therefore powers all the automation we could do for, or a new energy system that would empower not only an agricultural revolution like we've never even imagined before, but therefore a social revolution like we've never imagined before, as we discussed. So it's these kinds of middle points between things that I'm really interested in looking at, and that's really a part of the presentation I have today, which I'm calling the meaning of meaning. So let me just really zoom out here for a second and just say where I'm at today and what this is about. I've just had my head so far into the details of it. I think I even need to zoom out a little bit. But so, I've been presenting here for many weeks now, probably maybe off and on 2 months or such, and we've covered a lot of different topics. I kind of bounce around a bit in what would seem like disparate topics, but to me, they are disparate. They are it's a variety of different perspectives, I would put, but I really am going for a center, and that's what I'm calling the meaning of meaning. And that one of my fundamental premises is that our biggest problem in the world today is that we're in a crisis of meaning. We're in an existential crisis. We're in a psychological crisis. We're in a crisis of perspective. We're not seeing clearly, and that's okay. Actually, I think there's points in history where we do that, but then I think what usually follows periods like that where we're not seeing clearly is then a whole new way of seeing. And so that's also some of what I presented. I think just the last one I did was, on on running some parallels in history, including the last Renaissance. So that's a big part of what I'm presenting today is just what my perspective is on what's happening in the world, and some both general and a mix of general and specific notions around what could really be emerging right now. And because it seems so chaotic, and it is chaotic, and there are real dangers afoot. So I don't want to be overly optimistic, but at the same time, we do need something like a new story, a guiding perspective, a guiding framework, or multiple of them, to keep us all on track towards possibly converging what normally seems separate problems into new solutions. Because this has happened in history before. And I'm going to talk about, I'm going to kind of do a rewind a bit and look at some of what I was talking about last time I presented on the Renaissance, and then carry that forward. And this is also all in context of what I'm now launching today, which I'm so excited about. I'm launching my new personal website and a Patreon page in coordination. And I've just launched it in the last hour. They're now out there after about, I would say, at least 3 months of me really, really, really focusing on this. This has been my number one workhorse for at least 3 months, maybe actually about 4 to 5 months. So I put a lot of time into this already. Now, so I'm gonna show that too. But I just want to say up front, I've just launched them. They're actually public right now. I did that in the last hour. They may not be perfect, but I know they're not perfect. There's still maybe some typos and some links that need fixed. But I just recently decided, and I think in conversation with you a week or two ago, Jay, I just decided, I've been working on these so long. They need to get out. I need to start the next phase of what I'm doing, because these are just platforms for the work I'm doing. I have a very broad scope of interests and projects, and to me, they all have a coherent center to them. They're all emerging from a common place. But so this is like a new platform that kind of holds it all. And then I'm going to be working from this platform for years from now, like probably a decade or maybe more. That's what I see. Over this next decade, this is the platform I'm going to be primarily operating off of. That'll be launching all kinds of creative projects. So that is actually, so today it's live. And I just want to take the opportunity to have this presentation to announce that, as also a way for me to just really just do it, just put it out there. There was a time limit, 3 p.m. So now it's out there, and I'm presenting it in this context. And I just also want to say, whatever I present today, I'm totally open to feedback. In fact, I'm really looking for that. I'm not publicly promoting this yet. The websites are live, but I'm not going to broadcast them out on social media. They're just sitting there. I'm only going to mention it to this group and maybe a few close friends, and then maybe spend another week or two, making edits big or small before I start really promoting or marketing and stuff like that. But so that's what's happening. And with that said, so I'm going to do this short presentation, just kind of revisiting, a really broad context of where I'm coming from as a philosopher and an artist, and then I'll show you these new platforms. So
cool, Michael. Thank you. I'm honored. Yeah. We're all honored.
So I'm honored too, really. I really value the opportunity to be able to have this social connection and real-time community outlet where we can all share what we're working on and collaborate in this way. That's what it's all about. So I'm super appreciative.
Yeah, and if you don't mind, a quick comment. Speaking of platforms, see how the 24-hour block party, it in turn is a platform now for Mythic Systems.
Yeah, right? Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and for vegans of color, and for food healers, and for the divine feminine, right? And for Nolan, late night with Nolan straight up with Nolan straight. We got all these cool segments. So it's a platform that contains it all, and therefore builds community because we cross-pollinate. Anyway, back to you.
That's right, cross-pollinating. That's what it's all about. Connectivity. Yeah. Yeah, actually, before I start, I just want to say I went on a backpacking trip last weekend, a 3-day backpacking trip up into to some really remote wilderness out here in Mount Shasta, and it was so great, so profound. And I had this moment one morning. I was out there by myself, saw no other human beings for 3 days, just birds and plants, one deer, and maybe some hidden bear, and no mobile connectivity. I couldn't even check Facebook if I wanted to. No one could call me if they wanted to. It was profound. It was really great. I highly recommend doing that now and then. And I had this moment on, I think, Saturday morning. I was watching the sunrise, and I just had one of these moments that's hard to really put into words, where I felt such a profound connection with nature, such a reclaiming by nature. And I just could feel the connectivity. The message, the transmission was like this. It's like, one day you're going to die, like nature's speaking to me. You're going to die someday, soon, actually, soonish. We're all going to live this life, and then we're going to leave relatively soon. And it said, the most important thing, really, there's all these projects, all this stuff going on. It said the most important thing is in the end will be how well you were connected and how well you loved. Period. And I could feel it in nature. Nature was just like it's all. There was no Facebook out there. All the trees are sitting in one spot. They're there for years or even centuries. The trees are just sitting there. They know nothing of all that's happening out here. Nothing. They don't know anything about the virus. They know nothing about Trump or Facebook. They're just sitting there for hundreds of years in one spot, growing, connecting, the mycelial networks and all this. It's just pure, thriving abundance and connectivity of life. That's it. And I just got that for a moment. I was like, well, that's what really matters in the end. So in some sense, though, this is a representation of that. Having this technology that can connect us in this way, and having this group that's so consistently and loyally coming back and connecting for the sake of life on Earth. So thank you. Okay, I'll start my presentation. It's relatively short. Do a little screen share. Oh, I need it says host disabled attendee.
I just enabled it.
Okay, can you see the presentation screen?
Yeah, the meaning of meaning. Beautiful. Mm-hmm.
The meaning of meaning, and subtitle is Navigating a Planetary Renaissance. So this is somewhat of a proposal of what's coming. So,
hey, Michael, you might want to go full screen if you can. That might be a little better.
Yeah, I wasn't. When I try to do that, it often loses it. Right? Can you see it now?
No, now we see the White Album by the Beatles.
Okay, that's interesting.
now we're back to Carl. No, it's fine, Michael. It's fine.
Let me try one more time. How about that? No,
White Album.
Oh, actually, let me try this. Yeah, I don't know why it does that.
I think one of the options in Zoom is optimize for screen share or something like that. Optimize screen for that's for video.
I mean, I'm just choosing the monitor. But then when I choose so now you see it. But then when I click play, it changes. Oh, I know what'll happen. What if I do this? I'll choose this other screen. This will probably work. Here we go. Choose this. And then, how about that? Can you see that?
Perfect. Bingo. That's it.
Okay. So Carl Jung said, there is no linear evolution. There is only circumambulation of the self. That's that key word. Circumambulation is this idea that the way things really work in reality, both in the psyche and in cosmology, is things tend to spiral. They go around in a circle while moving forward. And so that's what I've been doing. The last many, I don't know how many I've done, how many talks and presentations I've done on the block party. We've been covering all these different topics. So we've talked about meaning and value and economics and story and history. We brought in Rudolf Steiner and Carl Jung. We've talked a lot about the shadow and philosophy and psychology and perspective and collective intelligence. And so it's like all these different topics are spiraling around. And it's like I'm trying to get at something that's in the middle of them all. As I've said before, it's not really just about a new story. It's about a new story for humanity. I'm also thinking it's about even a new way of understanding what we mean by story, a new way of because story is a vehicle for meaning and value. And so, my sense is there's something even new emerging. We'll still keep story, but there's something new emerging that will be a carrier for value, maybe more than one thing. And so, I call all these things, I call them ways of meaning, story, narrative, religion, philosophy, economics, even systems of value, frameworks of perspective. That's what all these things are. Economics is a system of value. So are morals. So is philosophy. Those are systems of value or ways of meaning. So, I'm just looking at all these things and how they are swirling around in the evolution that's gotten us this far, and wondering, what's coming next? What's the new way of meaning that's going to hold everything we're going into? Not just the problems and not just the solutions we're solving, but everything else too. So what new paradigms are emerging? So this is a slide from last time. I won't go into it. I'm not going to go into this again. That was a little bit intellectual, but just this idea of how, looking at carefully, like, of how history moves, and that, the Renaissance, this tremendous period of revolution in so many different sectors of society, and perspective and philosophy and religion and economics and even human consciousness, followed the Dark Ages. It followed a Black Plague, and then it went on. And in that Renaissance, it's not totally linear either, but one of the earlier seeds of the Renaissance was literally a shift in perspective, that there was an innovation in math and in painting and drawing that allowed artists to represent and simulate the world in a way that gave it a whole new dimension of three-dimensionality on two-dimensional paper. And that simple thing, we take that for granted today, but that was a really profound change in dimension and extension dimension that then reflected and put into context everything else that would come for another 100 or 200 years after that, as far as the extension of the dimensionality of the human being and of human society in all these ways that has completely set the stage for the modern world we live in today. And it's too much of a presentation to go into now, like what that was. So much came out of the Renaissance. But for example, the Copernican revolution. Copernicus used his telescope and used his math to prove that the Earth was not the center of the universe and that the sun was the center of the universe. And he knew, when he was alive, he knew that idea was so radical and the church would kill him if he was to come out with it publicly, that he wrote it out in a book and knew that the book would not be published until he had already died. And then the book was published, and then it still took several hundred years for that idea to be fully adopted into our world that we now take for granted today, that the sun is at the center of our solar system and the Earth is not. But what we saw there was a shift in perspective and also a reorientation of our world and of our cosmos, of our understanding of where we are and who we are. And that shifted the earth out of the way and put the sun at the center. And in a similar way, as just another example, Leonardo da Vinci created this famous drawing, the Vitruvian Man, which was a replication of some other philosopher or scholar named Vitruvius, who introduced new ideas around the symmetry of the body of the human being and the perfection of the human being. And this drawing then represented kind of like an icon that would then carry forward into new philosophies and new ideas around celebrating the human and celebrating the human individual in a way that hadn't happened in history before this. Where we had these rock stars like Leonardo da Vinci and Michelangelo and Copernicus and all these guys. Some of the first, rock stars of human history were emerging. And it's reflected the human being, kind of like elevating the human being as, a vehicle for the divine, as a vehicle for ingenuity. And that also then sets a stage for the next steps in our history, which has led to modernism and a lot of corruption from modernism. But again, it was in that sense, it was also a centering of the human in the world, and a new orientation of the human in our world. So, as I presented last time, are we, we're seeing signs that we're maybe already moving into something like a new renaissance, perhaps, with a lot of these new advents like artificial intelligence and all these amazing networks, not just the internet, but the blockchain technology, new economic systems, and virtual reality, all this new ways of connectivity and seeing things differently. Not to dismiss some of the dangers here, but we're seeing some potentials of assemblages of a coherent movement towards something entirely new emerging. And so, just maybe we're on the verge of a new perspective, so to speak, a Copernican revolution of the cosmos and consciousness. This is just a really basic approach to it, just to give some general notions. But on the left, we seeing the brain, the network brain. Up to this point, in only the last few decades, we've been regarding humans as central to intelligence, and as the human brain as central to intelligence and consciousness. And now we're beginning to see signs that center of placing intelligence and consciousness on the human and the human brain is beginning to be displaced and decentralized. And this idea of networks and neural networks is now applying not just to computers and artificial intelligence, but also we're beginning to recognize, we're beginning to discover so much about nature and the natural world that we're realizing there's a lot more intelligence going on in this world than just the human brain. And there's more to the mystery of consciousness than we realized before. And so the human's beginning to lose its center, so to speak. And then on the other side, looking out into the cosmos, with all our new telescopes, we're rapidly extending our perception and understanding of the cosmos, including the probable existence of other forms of life and intelligence. That's probably coming in the next few decades. We'll probably make the first discoveries of extraterrestrial life of some form. And again, another recognition of just the vast prevalence of intelligence in the universe. And that and another track on that too would be what we're talking about here, mostly inside Radish, of collective intelligence, that where we went from the first Renaissance, where we celebrated the individual human and the ingenuity of the individual human. We don't lose that, but now we're moving into, as we're doing here, where each individual shares their own ingenuity, but we do it collectively and with connectivity towards an emergent collective intelligence. We're now displacing the individual towards and putting that center towards the collective and the synergistic intelligence we can realize together. So that's just a, can you still see my screen, or you see me?
We see your screen. Michael Guy was creating mythic systems with your colorful hat.
Great, yeah. So that's just a basic introduction of just, of the general trend I'm leaning into. And here's my new website. And I think, I don't want to go through the whole thing here. I just invite people, I'll put the links in the chat, and I invite people to go there whenever they'd like and review it. And also there's a Patreon page. And there's quite a bit here to look at. So I just invite people to go check it out and let me know, like reach out to me directly, or send me a message in Facebook, or chat me up here next time. I'm open to any form of communication. I'm just looking for feedback at this point in any way.
Yeah, first of all, love it. Always love watching your presentations. They kind of just like take me to another dimension kind of thing. It's like normal time and normal reality takes a pause because it's so much bigger. And that's my first piece of feedback, was just awesome as usual. Right. And now one thing that one little piece of feedback is, so you mentioned, and you sort of stated it in a couple of different ways. One is the going from Earth centric to the sun being the center of our universe, and then the sun being the center of our solar system.
Right.
Because what wasn't stated explicitly, and this could be stated, is that then the next, transformation of perspective was not even the sun is the center, right? But there's something else that's the center. In fact, the center was this big explosion that happened. And so but what I'm saying is that transformation was a lot easier. The big one was the first one, right? That we're not the center of the universe.
Yeah.
Arguably the really first big one was that we're round, and you can go, Magellan went all the way around, and what's going on? I thought this place was flat, And so anyway, it's just interesting to look at the progression. But then, speaking of progressions, it just kind of, for me, it just screams that hyper networked collective super intelligence is just gonna blow. I mean, we're essentially going vertical now, right? Prior to Gutenberg, we were kind of flatlined. Gutenberg got us kicked off the beginning of the knee, and it was a long knee that went all through the computer revolution, internet, all that, and now we're practically vertical, and it's just right. Because it's kind of like once the avatar like really opens its eyes, the avatar of this hyper networked collective super intelligence, it's just like there's something singular about it, right? I wouldn't expect your great grandson 1,000 years from now to say great grandpa Michael back in 2020 showed us this, and then we went through the next seven big epics, right? No, it's like, this is the big one, right here, right now. Of course, they probably felt that way back in 1351.
Oh, of course. It's always big by contrast,
Right. So who knows what awaits? It's just, it feels so big to us. Okay, I got it. Well, that was a big takeaway. for me,
Yeah.
because it's like, yeah, what does come next? You see, it's hard to think of what comes next after that.
Yeah,
Right.
well, I thought about that a bit. You're right. It was implied in when I was presenting that in the same way that, the Copernican revolution moved the sun to the center of our universe, which now we know is just the center of our solar system, which is now there's, billions and billions of other solar systems out there. And there in our local galaxy, there's a center to our local galaxy, which is still much of a mystery to us. We think there's a supermassive black hole at the center of our galaxy, which we don't know much about. And that's what all these billions of stars in our galaxy are orbiting around, including our own little sun and our own little Earth. And so we've relatively discovered that in the last several decades, I think. And then actually the Big Bang is even being challenged now. I've done some research into this. There's some really great stuff happening in cosmological research right now, where we're discovering that the universe has some shape to it that's just really unexpected, and that things are looking very weird out there. So yeah, there's something else coming. Maybe it might take us centuries to get there to really figure it out, but yeah, I think we're at the very beginnings of it, though. Yeah, it's going to be really, really. It might be a really long renaissance with many different stages or something. It'll make the Italian Renaissance just look like a Disneyland trip. You know, but these, the point is, you know, I see, what I see happening right now in the world, especially if with what's happening on Facebook right now, it's just a circus of insanity and anxiety. That's what I see. I think people are really anxious with good reason, with really good reason. People are very anxious right now for all kinds of reasons. And I just see that as a gesture to balance out some of our anxiety and uncertainty of what's happening in the world. I'm really pushing towards offering as much vision and narrative and perspective as possible to just balance that out. So that's mainly what I'm doing like this.
Beautiful, beautiful. Wow, wow. Mm.
And Michael, what's your Facebook coordinate?
My Facebook what?
Your Facebook coordinates?
Oh, sure. I'll post it in chat too.
Jackie mentioned that she needed to step out for a little bit, but she'll be back
Okay.
a little later. And yeah, I mean, for me, the picture of the avatar waking up, right? That's what this is, because we're waking up into a whole new form of being, right? Which is this is the Cambrian explosion. We're going from unicellular, unicranial to multicranial. And that literally transforms us into a different being, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Old humanity is essentially going extinct in a very real way. Just like the individual cells that got together in the Cambrian explosion, when they first got together, they didn't really change that much. The Lego blocks didn't really change themselves that much, right? Because it was they just learned how to kind of stick together, and then, over time figured out how to exchange information and signaling and all that stuff. And so, yes, we still retain individuality, right? It's like, would you rather be just alone in the world as a 4-year-old kid walking the streets, or part of a family with a roof over your head? Well, of course I want to be a part of a family. See, now we're learning about our human family. And it's going to be like, well, of course I'm part of the human family. And of course I feed my neighbors and make sure no one's lonely or no one's hungry and no one's sick. And, you know, of course that's what we do. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, um, we are like these, you know, unfortunate kids in the most violent Brazilian favela who are orphaned, you know, and just band together to play some really bad games and tell each other really bad stories about themselves, each other, the world, other people, et cetera, et cetera. And we're basically just gently helping them transition into the family that they never knew they always needed,
Mm-hmm.
right? Off the streets and into that warm, loving human family.
Nice.
Yeah. So, and, you know, and once you're part of that family, you sort of forever say goodbye. Yes, you've got memories and lessons learned and scars and shit, trauma even, right? But you forever say goodbye to that earlier life. Right. I remember when I was like in middle school, you know, I was kind of into, you know, getting into some bad shit. And I won't go into details lest this end up in the National Enquirer or something. But, you know, I was kind of being a bad boy. And then I went to live in Spain for my freshman year of high school. And it just completely transformed my world. And then when I came back, I was very studious and this and that and getting into this really cool volunteer work. And it was just, my old self was just gone. Right. And my friends just couldn't believe it. Right. Everything was different. And so I feel like it's one of those transformations where we just say goodbye to that old life. Right. And we don't ever want to go back to that. Right. Who would ever want to go back to hoarding, you know, post Renaissance?
Mm-hmm.
Right. So it's that radically transformational. Everything is transforming and we're really coming together in such cool ways.
Yeah, I like how you said it at the beginning that we're really becoming something like a new being. Um, some people call this that we're entering, you know, a new age. There's different words for it. Some people call it the meta modern age. I like that. Some people call it the post-human age, which that would be included in the meta modern. Post-human, which can sound a little bit scary, you know. And I think that's part of what's going on is that we sense that this is happening. That you know, where the last 500 years, especially since the Italian Renaissance, we've been celebrating the human and celebrating the individual human. And we've done such incredible things. But now it's shifting again, where we don't really need to lose that, but the emphasis is becoming onto something else. And that we, in some way, you know, we're becoming post-human, and there could be different ways of that coming into expression. You know, with, you know, like this kind of scary ways, you know, robotics and cybernetics. You know, humans who will choose to become possible use synthetic hybrid computer people. But I think it's more than that too. You know, that'll be happening to some extent. But I think it's far more than that. That's just one slice of it. That also the collective intelligence is a post-human expression for sure. Collective superintelligence, where the most intelligent expression on planet Earth, maybe next to nature itself, maybe not, will be a super intelligent collective organism. Vastly intelligent, beyond the intelligence of any single human being. But then human beings might be able to ride on top of that. But also, I think even further, it's also a psycho-spiritual revolution that not only are we becoming something new, but we're also just realizing what we actually are in being. You know, I think the further we go out into space, we'll also begin to recognize just that there's just immense intelligence out there, and that we were never separate from that. We were already an expression of it, and so that there's that branch of it too. That it's a new kind of spirituality. I don't know if it. I don't know necessarily whether there'll be a church or religion or not, but it'll just be probably more of a direct experience of a sense of beingness that we already were, but it's just becoming more realized somehow. I think that's part of it too. So it'll be the post-human, we're still human, but we're realizing we're something more than just human. So that'll be fun.
Yeah, I just given the immensity of our huge leap forward in capabilities, and you mentioned that briefly about like kind of this new agricultural revolution where food is just abundant, like oxygen, like water, you know.
Uh-huh.
Um, and and with automation and everything else, we basically don't really have to work. So we're kind of just like by default, you know, we got, I don't know, a couple of Neuralinks up our ass and some super cool goggles. I mean, just by default, right? It's like, why would you wake up and spend even 30 minutes before plugging in and experiencing the latest update to reality? Well, today in reality, and it's been discovered that the Big Bang is obsolete, and and we get it. And meanwhile, and now we're connecting with 17 new life forms, one of which is just hyper intelligent. You know, and here's, you know, whoever from some other life form civilization to explain to us what this new hyper intelligence is all about and how we might interact with it. And I mean, it's like, how could you not plug into that immediately, right? And, you know, we're all just kind of like communing and having these, you know, neuro-linked conversations. Some people are old school and they still like to talk like me. Other people just kind of really get into the wave and then just, you know, are like just flowing with it, right? Dude, let's go manual and let's actually talk to each other, right? They'll be
so slow.
I know the new kids are like, that's so slow. And we're like, but you're missing out on life. It's part of life. Like, piss off. Come on. You're missing out on life, you old fart. And you see, this kind of humorous, what we're doing right now is humorous co-creation of science fiction crossed with humor. No, it's more like, yeah, it's humorous co-creation of science. Because this is serious sci-fi we're talking about here. It's not
serious sci-fi.
This is serious, but it's collective intelligence coming up with the sci-fi. Instead of Philip K. Dick at his typewriter and cigarettes, right, in LA, it's us on Zoom, spanning multiple continents. Wow. Wow. And this new medium of humorous co-creative sci-fi, right, helps make sense of the journey and where we're headed, right? It's kind of like, you know, the master pilot predicting what the landing is going to be like on the runway so that he makes it smoother for everyone.
Did you watch the recent SpaceX rocket launch?
Mm-mm.
Did you know about it?
I did.
It's
pretty
pretty
beautiful.
Cool. Yeah, it was really, you know, did you see any images from it? Yeah, I mean, the space capsule is just next level. They've got the astronaut suits. They're like, they're like, finally, we're out of the 1960s space suits. It is something that looks like it could be on, TV or some new sci-fi TV. This nice custom made, really nice spacesuits, and the astronauts have touch screens, so all their instrumentation is done on touch screens. It's just a really clean cockpit. and it was the first commercial launch of humans into space, which is, seems like what's the big deal, but it's just this little tiny gateway that now opened up really a new age of space exploration. That's going to accelerate over the next years and centuries. And I know not everyone agrees with it, but in my opinion, I think it's a really good thing. I think it's part of this renaissance, and a lot of good will come out of it.
And is it a totally reusable rocket?
Yeah, I think it's totally reusable. I'm not sure if it's 100%, but I know that it drastically cuts the cost. Yeah, the main part of the rocket comes back and automatically, it's all automated, will automatically land itself.
Yeah, it's all completely recyclable or reused again.
Yeah.
The boosters come back and land on their pads right where some pads are out in the Pacific, but everything lands and everything is based. It can be all refueled again, added to another rocket and sent up again 4 hours later, literally. When
4
they get
hours.
them.
It's amazing.
Once they start getting them out, he have them coming out now. One rocket every 4 days out of the off the conveyor belt, because they're producing hundreds of them.
Yeah, there's gonna be hundreds of them. So that'll then drop the price, so that a low orbital or high orbital rocket launch will just be fraction of the cost that it used to be, and they're going to start doing international launches. So right, I looked at the data. You in the future is, I don't know, I think within 10 years or something, you can go from any city in the world to any other city in the world in 30 minutes.
Not just that, from a logistical point, they were even I don't want to take it down this road, no, but even the American military are interested, because you can ship over so many tons to the other side of the world in a half an hour, like.
Yeah.
So many hundred, like
SpaceX. I predict that SpaceX will become one of the first $1 trillion companies in the world. They're not public yet, so you can't buy it. But yeah, it's cool.
Well, by the end of this year, according to a lot of the scientists and the reasons why we're here, by the end of this year, a lot will be plain to see for people, and regarding the climate and everything else, and even these people with these plans, these future plans, are going to have to start asking themselves questions like about, how can we plan for the future if there in any fucking future left, like, because they can't keep their eyes closed to it for too long, like.
Who do you mean exactly?
Well, I mean, Elon Musk is an innovator, and he has his what I'd call his blinkers on at the moment, because he's focused on his own projects.
Yeah.
Like, I know he's aware of the climate situation, but he's either turning a blind eye to it, as I said, to the true facts, or he's not aware of the true facts, one or the other. But my point is, as an innovator, I'm sure if he thought that there was some form of engineering technology that could be thought up that would actually save the problem, or prevent the catastrophes that are happening, well, then his future plans with space travel would then be possible. But until they face up to the climate situation, all those future plans with the space situation aren't even going to be possible.
Right.
If you know what I mean?
Well, yeah, I would love to just have 5 minutes in the room to ask him about that, because he's thinking about this stuff. Because I mean, at the same time, he's running Tesla. Tesla's also Tesla. Yeah, Jamie, just one second. Let me comment on Tesla, because like Tesla's also just like screaming right now. Tesla's majorly disrupting shit. the Tesla stock just crossed $1,000 a few days ago for the first time. They're predicting it going to $22,000. Tesla is not to be underestimated. You know, it's too much to go into. They are so smart what they're doing. Do you know the mission of the company is not just to make electric cars? The mission of the company, this is stated on their website, the mission of the company is to accelerate the adoption of sustainable energy technology in the world. That's their mission. That's why they released all their patents to the world. That's why they're leading, but they're not competitive. They want people to follow them. They want to transform the world, and they're going to. The term Tesla is going to become a global brand across automobiles, across batteries, across solar devices, across HVAC. They're just innovating in every direction across electricity. So, you know, doing all that, you got to know he's also thinking about this stuff. My guess is that's just what he's doing. He's leading by innovation. You know, and he's leading by innovation also with the intention to disrupt everyone else. Because, like, you know, he came up with the Cybertruck. Don't underestimate the Cybertruck, man. This Cybertruck was incredibly strategic project to disrupt one of the biggest automobile blocks in the world, which is the American truck industry. This Cybertruck made, you know, people look at the Cybertruck and go like, I would never buy that. We're not getting it. This thing, when people understand what this, it's not just a truck, it's a new type of vehicle. And when people understand that it costs less and it does more than any other truck on the market, people are going to have no choice but to buy it. And it's just the Ford and Chrysler and Chevron, they should be shaking in their boots right now. And it's good they're shaking their boots because they haven't been changing fast enough. That's the point. It's not just, you know, like what we're talking about here with SRM technology. Like, we can come up with the ideas, but that's, you know, that's only half of the process, I think. Because the idea, you know, the ideas don't always move for all kinds of reasons. You know, before Musk started Tesla, the electric car, other companies had tried to push out the electric car and it kept on getting killed deliberately. Other companies would smash it because it was too competitive. Elon Musk strategically, not for the sake of trying to make money off a car company, but for the sake of accelerating sustainable energy technology in the world, strategically launched Tesla in such a way that it finally broke through what you might call like psychic inertia of our collective that wants to keep doing things the old way, wants to stick to oil, wants to stick to all these old energy paradigms because it's too hard to change. You just want to keep with the same old thing that's making the big money and keep with the big boys and your barbecue steaks in your old truck, right? But that company, Tesla, is really doing good in the world in this way. It's not to be underestimated what they're doing. It's more than just about cars. So, you know, I see the same with I think it's similar with SpaceX. I think that you know, soon ordinary citizens will be able to take flights above the Earth, far above the Earth, to look down and get the same views that the astronauts got in the 1960s. When, you know, you can get these quotes from some of the early astronauts who say, you know, they said they felt so extraordinarily lucky to be able to look down and see the Earth without its borders, without all this stuff. They get this, it was this direct experience of seeing where we actually are on this little tiny fragile planet with this thin atmosphere that gave them this like illuminating direct, you know, insight that changed them forever, these astronauts. So they come back to Earth and like they'll never be the same again. We will be able to offer that now to more and more human beings. That's what I'm talking about. That's like the new type of religion that's coming. It's going to be a direct experience of, you know, flying out of this place for a second and like looking back. Right now it's just Facebook. Everyone's on Facebook, where it's the opposite. We're just buried in society with no recollection that we're in this infinite universe of intelligence. So SpaceX is just like this little tiny stepway that way that's going to keep expanding. And so I think when it's I would like to ask Elon Musk directly, but he probably thinks this way. I think he's very strategic, and he knows that other people could do SRM and other people can do so many other solutions. He's just choosing ones to really break apart a lot of the old infrastructure and psychic inertia that's been so hard to get through. Because people need to be inspired too. When people are inspired and led well, and they have a vision of the future that inspires them, then that's a big part of, I think, how things really get done too. But yeah, I'd like to know what he thought exactly. I'm not sure what he would say exactly. I wonder. Yeah, Jamin.
Well, hey, sweetheart. I did spend an hour with Elon Musk, not one-on-one, but at Congressman Dana Rohrabacher's birthday party.
When?
In 2014.
Cool.
And so here I am sitting amidst a bunch of rich Orange County Republicans, right? Celebrating Congressman Dana Rohrabacher's birthday. He had been congressman for like 20 years at that point, very popular. So he invites up Elon Musk, who got a little bit delayed in arriving because they were doing a rocket test for SpaceX. So he shows up and he's talking with addresses all of us. And he talks about climate change in the following terms, right? We don't know what's going to happen, but we are running one experiment on the one planet we've got. One single experiment on the one planet we've got.
Right.
And we don't know how it's going to turn out, and we should really think about what we're doing.
Yeah, I agree.
Right. And that was his way to it was masterful. That's how we created a wedge in the minds of these Republicans, whereas before their minds had been closed. Right. So he does think about climate change and all that. I've seen some of his videos and stuff, but listening to this conversation, right? What I'm seeing is a really kind of profound parallel between two different trajectories. Okay, one of them is the trajectory from MS-DOS through Windows to Linux and ultimately GitHub, right? And then, of course, we're just trying to break through the ice of, strong AI, so it starts coding itself and all that stuff. So that's one track, one evolution of operating systems. There's another evolution that I'm seeing here, which is an evolution which started with, writing, and then through like the corporation, and then Elon's empire, right? Where is this going to end up? Collective superintelligence. Collective superintelligence is to Elon's empire what Linux and GitHub were to, Windows 3.1. Okay. In other words, Elon is taking it as far as he can possibly take it within the current paradigm, which is about money and hoarding and power and hierarchy, right? He has created arguably the most powerful collective intelligence in the world, right? Measured by what it has produced and is producing, not just in machinery, but in revolutions and in the adoption of electric and solar and all this stuff, just like what you were saying, Michael. So it's definitely one of the most powerful collective intelligences ever observed. And it's very, and because here's the thing, and this actually gets to a fundamental question that we've been grappling with which is centralized versus decentralized collective intelligence, right? And Elon's empire is arguably the most badass centralized collective intelligence on the planet. Because, first they did PayPal, then, Tesla, Solar City, SpaceX, tunnels, and of course he's into, Neuralink. I mean, the list just...
Open AI.
Open AI. I mean, the list just goes on and on.
Yeah.
Because here's the thing, every time the dude has an idea, he essentially presses a button and 3 really smart folks show up, who are custom. I mean, what he's essentially doing is what we've been dreaming of doing, but he's actually doing it, but with a bunch of people who basically work for him for money, right? So totally different, motivation, and therefore sociology and culture and mission and story and everything else, right? And it's also just a brilliant ass dude at the center of it all. Talk about centralized, right? He's essentially the modern day Henry Ford, right? It was legendary that Henry Ford had, like, at his desk all these buttons. Each button was for a different expert. When he needed an expert, bam, and he'd do a whole chord, bring me all. So Henry Ford was the original collective intelligence dude. Elon Musk has taken it to a new level, right? All right, welcome. I think that's Bodo there. And Bodo, if it is you, you're arriving at the perfect time, because we're talking about the evolution of collective superintelligence and the concept that, yes, awesome. Welcome, Bodo. And we're talking about the Bodo meet Michael Gaio, Michael meet Bodo.
Hi, Bodo.
All right. Anyway, we've just been covering some amazing material. Michael, feel free to screen share again if you're game. Bodo's pretty high bandwidth, so you can probably say it in like 1/4 of the time, and he's just like,
okay.
Yep, computed.
Sure. Let me tee it up here.
Okay. And we are recording, if that's cool with everybody. Just, you can always do pause if you want to pause recording, never a problem.
Let's see. Can you see my screen?
Not yet, Michael.
Here we go. So, talking about the meaning of meaning and navigating a planetary renaissance, Carl Jung talks about, there's no linear evolution, there is only circumambulation itself, like a labyrinth. I've been doing a number of presentations for the last many weeks and talking about all these different topics, story and meaning and value, economics, history, Carl Jung, shadow, philosophy, perspective, psychospirituality. Kind of like they would seem like separate topics, but in my mind, they aren't. They're like spiraling around something at the center. What do they all have in common? I sense there's just a new major way coming. I like to call it, that these things are all ways of meaning or systems of value or frameworks of perspective. And what new paradigms are emerging? What new way are we orienting around the way we make meaning in the world and the way we understand who we are and what we are and where we are? I've talked before about looking backwards into history, that we've had these times like the Italian Renaissance, which just happened to follow the Middle Ages and the Black Plague. The Black Plague kind of set the stage for one of the most extraordinary, ingenious periods of history, the Renaissance, which then set the stage for everything we know today in modernism. And the Renaissance, no small topic. We could talk for hours about it, but one way to really distill it down is that near the beginning of the Renaissance, one of those important catalyzing factors was the invention of perspectival drawing, going from two-dimensional art to three-dimensional representation of art based on an innovation in mathematics, really, that allowed for artists to represent the world in a more realistic way. And this was literally an extension of dimensionality in the ways that humans mimicked the world, that then reflected so much more extension of dimensionality in so many sectors of our society following this. For example, the Copernican revolution, where Copernicus mathematically proved that the Earth was not the center of the universe and that the sun was in fact the center of a solar system, reorientating us to our cosmos. And in a kind of parallel way, Leonardo da Vinci, in his famous Vitruvius Man drawing, was reflecting and elevating, the human being as a new kind of center of ingenuity and intelligence that then has continued to unfold well into our modern age. And so the question is, are we on the cusp of, or are we already well into maybe some emergence of something like a new renaissance, with all these different elements emerging, these big technological trends and cultural trends of like networks and artificial intelligence and new economics and virtual reality and robotics and automation. Huge trends all seem to be emerging at the same time that are disrupting everything we've known we are before this. So, this could be a much larger presentation, but I'm just offering some general notions here that perhaps we're on something like a Copernican revolution of the cosmos and consciousness again, where we've been so used to regarding humans as the central modality of intelligence and the human brain as central to intelligence and consciousness, but that's changing now. The center is being displaced and decentralized again. And looking outward in our cosmos with all our new telescope technology, we haven't done it yet, but it seems highly probable, and with every year passing, increasingly probable, that we're likely to discover some other forms of life and intelligence in the universe, and probably discover that intelligence is everywhere. So that's the end of the presentation. I'm also as today launching my new website, which I've been working on for months, which there's a lot there, but I'm just introducing it generally for people to check out. But it's in the same scope of this questioning and this new orientation to new types of meaning and new ways of orientating to our world and the world around us. So I invite you to check it out, and I'm open to feedback. Thanks, guys.
Super cool. Yeah, so we're just having an open conversation here, and then that conversation just led to some really amazing discussions. And then I got this insight that imagine two parallel tracks, and love to hear your thoughts on this, Bodo, but no pressure. No one's ever pressured to speak or anything like that, seriously. But one is the evolution from, say, MS-DOS, Microsoft DOS, through Windows to Linux as an open source collective intelligence, and then ultimately GitHub, which is a whole platform for launching infinite Linuxes, etc. Now consider a parallel evolution where we went from the corporation, right, the modern American 1950s corporation, through, modern tech giants, through Elon Musk's empire. Because if you want to measure it in terms of accomplishments as your measuring stick, Elon's empire is arguably the most powerful collective intelligence that exists on the planet. I mean, reusable rockets that land themselves automatically and all this, cars that are revolutionizing the biggest industry on earth, et cetera. Neuralink, I mean, it just goes on and on. It's just, and so, having studied a little bit about Elon Musk and having been at a birthday party with him where he addressed us all, it was actually at a politician's birthday party. I've got a bit of an appreciation for him, and it's just clear that he's kind of created this sort of maxed out private closed source hierarchical network centralized collective intelligence, because he's created this virtuous cycle with money where he's essentially created this infinite money machine so he can hire the best talent that can be bought, right? And therein lies the ultimate bifurcation between the Windows evolution and Linux and then GitHub, the Elon evolution versus collective superintelligence, which is the Linux of collective intelligence, and then the GitHub of collective intelligence. So, and that's what we feel like we're at the cusp of here with this, because there already exists a vast network of Zoom video conferences, which for me are kind of this maxed out, super high bandwidth, creative expression, transfer of information, mirror neurons, because we get to see each other. Oh, he's getting it. Oh, he's not getting it. Well, let me say a little bit more. And with 10 seconds more of investment, oh, here's what I really mean by that. That makes the difference between a wasted hour-and-a-half lecture in college because you got lost at minute 7 and because you didn't know what a triple integral differential, whatever the bleep equation is, and so you're fried from there on out. No. So anyway, this is the ultimate high bandwidth, until Neuralink hits V3 or something like that, this is it. Okay. So for years, literally, I'd been dreaming of a situation where we have a vast network of video conference conversations. It didn't happen until COVID. Now it's here. All that's missing is very intelligent hyperconnectivity. And I'm not talking about AI. I'm talking about standard 1950s databases, for crying out loud. Oh, you want to talk about permaculture and automation? So does Jamin. Permaculture, automation. And we've got more than 2 decades now of badass keyword search and ontology mapping and syntactic structures overlaid and all this. All the Lego blocks you could ever want are there. They're just scattered all over grandma's living room carpet. And it's our job to put them together and create the connectivity, create the software, or adapt rather existing software and existing tools to this, right? So, and in a sense, one of the simplest ways to think about it is we need to create the ultimate mashup between Wikipedia, Reddit, and Zoom, right? And advanced search. I mean, an advanced search that would make Google's advanced search look like freaking Tinker Toys, right? I mean, like really cool advanced search where you say, listen, I don't just want to find out who's talking about these topics or intersections of topics. I want to be able to dial in the kinds of people. I want them to be, nerdy, hyperactive engineers like me, because I understand myself when I talk with nerdy, hyperactive engineers like me, right? Or you know what, today I'm feeling really chill. I want to hang out with more like meditative types like my auntie. It's just like dial in your experience. Who do you want to be hanging with? With what kind of goal? With what kind of objective? With what kind of constraints? What are the check boxes that are mandatory to get into this conversation? You got to believe in climate change. You got to believe it's exponential. You got to believe we have less than 5 years left. Okay, great. You're ready for this conversation. Because otherwise, I don't want to be wasting my time with a bunch of climate change deniers from Oklahoma. Give me a break. All right? It's a waste of my life. So you get to dial in your life. You get to dial in your path. And at this point, I'd like to Harlem Globetrotters pass the basketball to Michael Gaio, who thinks in terms of mythical pathways and journeys and cool shit like that.
What's the question?
It's to take the basketball and spin it or something, in terms of like a journey, because I'm talking about basically taking these different pathways through these, you're kind of in your own little spaceship going through this conversational universe, each planet is a conversation, right? Some planets are expanding, others are contracting, others just hit a pause button because they've gone for 10 hours straight and everybody wants to go to bed. and 90% of them are in Europe, so they all go to bed at the same time. You know, others get reactivated the next day, others branch off of others. So in this whole kind of your spaceship navigating from conversation to conversation, getting just the pollination that you need to basically make you big enough to go to the next flower and get the next bump in pollination, which is exactly what you needed to be able to understand this other conversation over here that you've been wanting to break into, right? But you didn't know what you were missing. Well, with version 4.3 of CSI, Collective Superintelligence, you know, with the Neuralink mind mapping thing, you can get an automatic like DNA printout of your gaps in knowledge to get you to that conversation that you're salivating over. I want to be talking with Elon and you know, and whoever else about whatever. Well, you got to learn all this shit first, otherwise you're going to waste their time. Elon, what's a Neuralink? He loves that question, right? No, you know, click on this link, dude, etc. That's what I'm talking about, Michael.
What he'll probably be able to do is he'll be able to, you know, with the Neuralink, with what the Neuralink will also do, you know, the other side of it is it's going to allow us to go into the brain and study it in a way we haven't been able to. We're up to this point, we're using MRI and fMRI and, you know, some EEG, which is just like monkey tools basically on the human brain. We're just barely getting a fingerprint on the brain. But with the Neuralink, it's going, you see, it's going both ways. It's not just that we're going to be able to like communicate to each other. We can be able to read the brain in very deep levels in ways that we maybe can't even imagine yet, and study it in ways. So I think that's also going to be a bridge to, you know, all this other speculation around, you know, encoding our consciousness of the computers and stuff like this. So like Elon, he could like take all these, you know, you take the top 10,000 conversations he's had and then upload them into an AI replicant, and then other people can just chat with that. For the it's like the new FAQ. Oh, just go to my FAQ AI. If you have any of 10,000 questions you want to ask me, the most common 10,000 questions, you can just chat with my AI all night long. It's basically the same.
You guys are nuts.
I know.
I don't like that. I don't like what you're saying. I'm shocked by you, Michael.
Oh, we're just playing basketball. We're just taking shots just for fun. You know, because you know how I feel about Ariman. I mean, you know, I'm just on, you know, I'm like a Star Wars Jedi. You know, the Jedi, they balance on the edge of the light and the dark in order to balance it.
Okay.
So in order to balance it, we got to talk about both sides.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. But I'm just jumping in. Sorry, I just heard all the blah blah about the,
Right.
you know, coding the brain and all that bullshit. It's like, really? How about using your intuition? How about getting into your spirit and, you know, finding out, downloading information without chips in your brain? Because we can do that, right?
You can. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, if I had a choice between intuition and intuition plus a rotary telephone, I'm going to go with the latter.
No, you don't need a phone if you're actually using your intuition. You really don't. Like, I can communicate with any one of you just with my mind. And if
Let's try it.
if you're finely tuned, you can hear it. You can pick it up. And I've done this experiment with kids where I visualized a flower and a particular colored flower. And I just really visualize it and I don't speak it. I'm just focusing on it. And I ask the children not to guess, just the first thing that comes in their head. And say I was focusing on a tulip, a red tulip. Every single child would say red tulip.
It's true.
We just got out of practice. You know, we're so hooked onto the technology and depending on things like telephones, we just don't know how to communicate in other ways anymore. But it doesn't mean that doesn't exist as a form of communication.
Well, you know, this gets into the conversation about Ariman, right?
Yeah.
We're talking about something very specific. Like we could talk about telepathy versus telephony, because that's the thing is like what you're saying, I've experienced what you're talking about too. I've had psychic phenomena. I know it's real. However, if I want to send a message to my mom, say, Happy Mother's Day, Mom,
Yeah.
am I going to sit in a chair and like, and trust that she picks it up in her mind? Or am I just going to send her a text or call her on the phone? That way I can be more explicit and I can be sure that she's getting the communication I want her to give. So anything. Now the trick is, you're right. Like, we don't want this, if we become dependent on the technology, then we possibly risk losing something more inherent in our beingness, which is invaluable. Okay, like, that's what you're saying. It's natural and it's invaluable that we don't lose that. So that's let's talk about this specifically. But so we could broaden out, like we could relate this to all kinds of technologies, and then we could put it in the context of what Steiner's talking about, and what we talked about before, is of Ahriman, right? This idea, whether it's whatever Ahriman really is, there's this unseen force that's kind of like running this whole techno show, right?
Yeah.
Now, I don't think we've had that conversation yet, but said simply, I've got a new book about Steiner I've been reading the last couple of months. It's just excellent. They mention this a bit in there. And one thing he talks about this a bit about this. I wonder if you've heard the same thing, that he compares that there's like almost like a spiritual battle that's been going on for a long time, and that Lucifer and Ahriman are two of these unseen, less than good forces, let's say, compared to like Christ, the Christ force, and these other angelic forces, or whatever they really are. Whatever these things really are, I believe they do have reality to them. Whether they're, I call them like intelligent forces. There's these intelligent forces in the universe that are operating in ways that we don't commonly see so much, right? But so when it comes to Ahriman and Christ, what Steiner says, Melissa, is Steiner says that traditionally Christ he went through these temptations, the 3 or 4 temptations or whatever it was in the Bible, and that the final temptation was just Ahriman trying to tempt Christ, and Christ realized that he had to let Ahriman win that one. And there's something about that Ahriman's still operating in the world, because it has something to do with the contention of that, of what you're pointing to. You're talking about that we have this inherent natural psychic spiritual ability of goodness versus all this techno shit that potentially threatens. So there's this contention going on. And what Steiner's pointing to, and I believe, this is my perspective too, is that contention, this spiritual battle, or what I call it, this contention between very large unseen forces, is actually there as an opportunity for us to raise up to a higher thing, while integrating that.
Oh,
with it,
Michael.
so they become one thing.
Yeah. And he does say that the Luciferic and the Ahrimanic influence are necessary. Like Lucifer, if I remember correctly, he's really the force behind like the elemental beings and the plants growing and things. So we can't do without them, actually. It's just when they get out of balance. And so you can really see the Ahrimanic influence on this physical plane now is out of balance, because we're so dependent on technology, whether it's a computer or a washing machine or whatever it is. But we can also be thankful to our Ahrimanic influence for those things, because they are useful, right?
Yeah.
And if you meditate on, well, how do we handle Ahriman and that force that's at play here? We know it is. The answer I got was balance it with Christ consciousness. And Christ consciousness is compassion. And that's really what I see playing out now in the physical realm, is the battle between compassionate warriors and those who are getting sucked into the material and who don't want to let it go, right? But that's it. They don't have compassion. And so what we're being prepared for, I would say, the spiritual warriors on this planet, is to balance Ahriman with compassion, balance the materialism with compassion. And the question is whether there are enough of us who are going to be able to do that, at the final hour.
Mhm.
And we're seeing it playing out in the streets. It's playing out everywhere. And I find that just fascinating. So here we are in the realm of myth. We're right in the midst of it. We are the myth, and it's playing out through our everyday lives. And also Steiner does say that in this 21st century, Ahriman will become a physical being. So for all I know, it could be Donald Trump, he's just here doing his job, right? These guys, I mean, I wouldn't want that job. I don't think many of us would want that job, but it is a job, that was assigned by creation. And, the way I view it is that force, let's say it's an Ahrimanic force working through him, is necessary to bring the corruption and all the ill to the surface so that we can see it and address it. So how do we live and address it?
Mhm.
Do we address it with compassion and bring about change that way? Or do we buy into it, become stockbrokers or something, or, drill the earth some more? Yeah. Let's cut some more trees down.
Or I've thought that the Ahrimanic force could embody itself through AI and robotics. That would be coming into physicality on a substrate, manifold of intelligence. Because as we develop these, it's just like the disembodied intelligence of Ahriman can just come right into meet the artificial intelligence. It's a perfect match. Yeah, I think it's going to work out eventually.
Well, and the thing that I also find fascinating is that this battle, if we can call it that, it's not just happening here in the physical realm, it's also happening in the spiritual realm. It's like there's this huge shift happening in all these dimensions that are coexisting at the same time. And, I kind of wonder whether the outcome is already destined, and we're just players turning up, enacting our parts, and who knows, right?
Yeah, I do think it's destined. And I think ultimately,
Yeah.
if the earth is lost, then there's nothing for any of the forces to do. So, life only happens in balance.
Right.
So if things go too far out of balance, then, that side ultimately doesn't win either. So
Yeah.
it seems destined that it's I think of it like as like a step ladder. It's just like, we might come back one step, but we're always going forward too. It's called the transcendent bias in some philosophical circles. There's a evolutionary bias towards transcendence, just slightly.
Yeah. Yeah.
So eventually, we'll make it.
Yeah. And then if you read the Hopi myths, it says we've been here before. Like humans were on the earth before, they were just in a different realm. And there was destruction on the planet, and a tribe asked the creator if they could come up to this level on the earth. And the creator said, yes, as long as you continue planting with a stick and do not have any technology. So no electricity, no running water. You had to plant with a stick and carry water. And the myth has it that in with this tribe who agreed with the creator to live that way, one of they call it the bad seed, snuck in, and is why we're having all the havoc and chaos on this planet. It's kind of like a repeat pattern. You know how we have these repeat patterns?
Yeah.
And I think it was Jackie. No. It's my friend from Sudan told me she's with a 70-year-old elder woman who's marched with Martin Luther King. She's been a part of activism for her whole life. And she said that this time, she said, like, I've seen history repeat itself over and over again. And she said, but this time it's different. And I think we can all feel that, you know, it's
Yeah.
not like 1960s, right? Vietnam War. It's different. Things are happening differently, and we are being transformed and shaped and changed from the inside,
Mm-hmm.
which is exciting. You know, we get to witness it and be part of it.
It is a very exciting time.
Awesome, you know?
I think you hit the nail on the head earlier there when you said there, Emma, that when the evil is exposed, then it has to be addressed. And as you said, like, there's a fundamental shift going on all over the world at the moment in people's awareness. And even those who aren't aware are starting to wake up, like, so, you know, it's definitely all falling into place, as Jackie says, I think, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. Hi, Jackie.
Jackie, and welcome, Jessica.
Hi,
Well-
Jessica.
Welcome, everyone.
Okay, love you, Michael. Love you all. I gotta go eat. I'm getting
Me too. Me too. I'm gonna go eat also.
great talking with you and
Yeah.
doing it.
Thanks, Michael. Excellent as usual. I always enjoy the talks with you. So look forward to the next one.
Yeah. Me too. Thanks, James.
Awesome, Michael, as always. Wow. Just keep it coming, Michael.
Yeah. Just getting started now. Just getting started. Now getting a good foundation. Now I can start putting a lot more attention on specific content, like taking each of these ideas and really start to flush them out more and weave them together in more coherent perspectives and narratives.
Hey, Michael, I left you a link.
Oh, thanks.
Okay, some more work for you.
Great. Yeah, thanks so much for your links. I appreciate it. I'll check them out.
All righty. Well, at the top of the hour, in 5 minutes, we will kick off a 2-hour segment called Vegans of Color, which I'm super excited about. I might take these next 5 minutes and just take a little break. And so let me stop the current recording and we'll kick off a new one at top of the hour, or Jackie, whenever you let me know that you're ready. Okay, stopping this recording.